A big one they want to make sure that we share.
I got something, Tyler. It's kind of interesting,
Okay.
and I just tweeted it out to you. This is from Wired. That North Korean that hacked a security researcher, and this guy took matters into his own hands, and he took down the North Korean internet.
Whoa.
Yeah, I tweeted it out to the Tech News group, and I also just tweeted it to you directly, so you can find the
Oh
article.
wow, how?
He's a security researcher, so North Korea was targeting him to try to steal some of his hacking tools. And for about a year, he was kind of pissed off about it, and he finally decided to take matters into his own hands. And he found back doors to some of the software and things that North Korea uses, and he utilized those to do DNS attacks on their servers.
Yeah, that'll do it. They're not that hard to correct, but it will take shit down when you attack the DNSs. JT, you got your hand up in the Twitter space. What's going on?
Yeah, one interesting thing that came out of yesterday's earnings call with Mark Zuckerberg regarding the metaverse was that aside from the amount of money, the 10 billion in Quest and Portal, either devices or anything within that ecosystem, was that they are planning to expand the Horizon Worlds platform outside of VR. So they're looking to extend that to a mobile device, which is very important, especially if you wish to scale your metaverse ambitions. You have to start with devices outside of just the headset. So if you look at Rec Room, for example, they're device agnostic. You're able to use it not only on your mobile device, but also on your computer, your Xbox, your PlayStation, Android and iOS. So across all devices, this is very important. You also mentioned that there might be some integration within Facebook and Instagram with respects to Horizon Worlds. How that's going to look like, we're not too sure. But I think the mobile approach is very important for the scaling reason, but also they need to have some form of desktop version as well. So I think that might be coming down the road in the near future, and just sort of ties into the whole aspect of introducing the avatars into Instagram and Facebook, sort of small steps towards the direction that they wish to go forth with the metaverse. So this is a very important step in that direction. But also one other thing that I think is very important here, which just escaped my brain, so I'll end it there for now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the biggest story of today, we might as well just get into it because JT is dancing around it, is, well, let's do it the customary air horn. There we go. The big story today, February 3rd, Thursday, 2022, is being covered by all kinds of folks. Let's go with CNBC, where everyone's reporting the Meta, formerly known as Facebook's quarter earnings, which they had revenue of 33.6 billion, but the way this game is played, the way quarter earnings reports works is you reveal how much your revenues were. The market, the investors, Wall Street, whatever you want to call it, they have an anticipation. They have what's called an estimate of what you're going to report. They're guessing what they have an expectation called an estimate, and you need to beat that estimate handily. If you beat it barely, that's not good. And if you come below it, oh, that's tragically bad. And what happened was that their revenues was 33.6 billion and the estimate was 33.4. That's not enough in this game. That's like you just barely got your homework in on time. And the what can we say? Monthly active users were up 4% year over year, but misses on the earnings per share, and this is the most important number that you're being measured on as the company, is your earnings per share, meaning how many dollars did you make per share of the company. That's your EPS, your earnings per share. And their earnings per share was $3.67 per share. The Wall Street, the market, the investors were expecting $3.84 per share. That's a huge under. 20 cents ish under, 15 to 20 cents under is like it's not that often that tech companies miss like that, especially by that much. And so the Facebook stock is down 20%. Now the question is why? And the answers, there's several answers, and one of the most obvious answers is, as Facebook had to reveal, they can't dance around it, is that Apple's what is Apple's new app called? The Apple Transparency app. That basically Apple's asking Apple users, are you sure you want Facebook to be tracking you? And no, you don't. They know most people don't. So a lot of people are opting out of being tracked on Facebook, and that's hurting Facebook. But 20% of Facebook, to have a 20% drop in their stock price, translates into about $200 billion of value. So it's quite a dramatic downturn. And what that's doing in turn is driving all tech stocks down a bit. Remember how I said when Google had a fantastic quarter and had a 9% jump in price, the share price, that lifted tech stocks up notably that day. And, if how the bigger picture of how this game is played, during the earnings reports, is that if all the tech companies come in ahead, like Google did, then all the tech companies just boom for the next few weeks, because tech was clearly kicking ass more than people thought. But if tech companies are coming in below the expectations, like Facebook just did, and others repeat that, then that sets the tone that tech is sucking, not kicking ass, they're sucking ass, would be the Southern California slang. Instead of kicking ass, they're sucking ass, and this is a worrying development, especially if there's another big tech company in the next day or two who also comes in with lackluster earning reports, such as Facebook. It hurts the whole sector in a way. Matt, you were trying to jump in?
Yeah, I was trying to draw from a point that you made, I think last week or the week before, and this is not a Microsoft statement. This is a community interested person saying, we went from rising interest rates where tech, tanked, then we buoyed on the earnings or announcement of a couple companies. But Tyler, back to you, like the psychology of tech and supporting the economy. If Google does a 20-for-1 split to make it more, air quote, attractive as a stock, and we see sort of the reflection of earnings from Meta as, hey, people are leaving that platform, two different conversations that we've had over the last 3 or 4 weeks. I mean, what does this translate into? There's clearly not trust in Facebook for a multitude of reasons. And is tech trying to reset their value to be more attractive absent any clear vision execution path on the metaverse, which I do believe is real. It's just, is this like a little bubble that's having an impact between where we are today and actual delivery of these use cases?
Well, check this out. Yeah, so check this out. So there's a couple other things going on underneath the surface here that are worth diving into a little bit, which is Facebook's 24% drop this morning as it opens on the market is, like I said, a $200 billion valuation adjustment downward.
Huge.
Which is, not only is it huge, it's the biggest loss of market value in a single day for any U.S. company in history.
Hey, this is Al, but isn't that because of all the acquisitions that they've been making, like human resources? They've been on a splurge, like
you're just taking
grabbing
the next thought out of my head here, which is,
I'm sorry.
this is why I said there's more than meets the eye under the surface, because at simultaneously to Facebook getting the wind knocked out of it by Apple, right? that sets the moment where Facebook knows it needs to bet the farm on a new future, on a whole new path, on a whole new platform, which is the metaverse. Which, so they're betting the whole, and this is the moments of, that tech history are made out of. Like Mark Zuckerberg is this is like the biggest poker hand ever. He's being forced to go all in on this next hand on the metaverse, because the previous game, we're now in a post peak Facebook period with regard to Facebook as we formerly knew it, because it just got kneecapped. And we've known this. We've been talking about this leading up to this, but it's really official now, and because the numbers are in, and they're being impacted. And they even said that, in fact, it was the Facebook's chief financial officer says that Apple's transparency privacy changes will cost the company $10 billion in revenue for 2022. And that's enough to cause investors to bail out. Enough of them that's driving this price down. But simultaneously, they now need to cut their own legs off to save the ship, so to speak. And they're going all in on the metaverse, which is this huge new, potentially even bigger, better opportunity. And it's audacious, and it's takes incredible fortitude to do something like this. Although, in fairness, some companies historically would just ride out and have the slow death of the big company slow death that we've seen over time, like GE and all the rest of them. And Facebook sees this whole new era ahead of it, which could be it's the next new era. And if it plays correctly as it hopes that it was, Facebook will be a multitude bigger than it is today. And so this is the stuff that we're going to look back on, this moment of like Facebook in 2022. This actual earnings report, this is an absolute, probably the most critical moment in Facebook's history, where it's got to cut ties with its past and jump into a rocket ship to Mars, untested for the most part. It's a very bold, but again, not much choice. A sort of forced voyage. I'm maybe like the Christopher Columbus kind of comes to mind, or something, like being, got to get on the ship and head over the horizon, and not knowing what's next. And you're either going to reach a whole new continent, or you're going to die at sea. It's that kind of a thing. So, and they're going to have to invest very heavily to do it, like $10 billion. And that's the other issue and some people are intentionally reporting it wrongly by saying Facebook's already lost $10 billion on the metaverse. No, Facebook invested $10 billion on the metaverse, and that's probably the smartest thing they can do right now. So the fact that you as a journalist are reframing it as they've already lost $10 billion on the metaverse, no. They knew they're excited about the $10 billion they're spending on the metaverse, and the fact that nobody else is, because that's putting them, it's actually seems to be working out quite well if you look really closely at how that's playing out at the moment. And they got to throw as much as they can into it. It's all or nothing. They're burning the bridges. That's what it is. They are burning the bridges on what has brought them to this point thus far, and that's hard to do when you've come this far, to take this big of a game. Yeah.
This is David on the Clubhouse side. I think one way that I look at this, one way to look at it is it is absolutely an inflection point in the maturity of the advertising powered model. The action by Apple put Google and Facebook on notice, and Google is the other shoe, right, as it were, in our highly concentrated, duopolistic kind of, mobile service kind of living that we do. So, I mean, that's one key thing, and that's to me the most underlying, most important thing is it's their Apple is forcing the hand on that kind of the privacy kind of issue, a business model, ad supported business model. The second thing is, and you've been putting a lot of paint on the wall on this, is the full blast bet on a platform, because they don't have control over any platform.
Right.
So, but the question on that, whether they've lost it or they've invested, yes, there's still a question mark, but it really depends on how you scope when the market's going to emerge, right? And so there are lots of markets, interactive TV that Netflix finally got going, RFID, IoT. These markets can take well over a decade to actually get into some kind of a meaningful deployment. So that is kind of the clock is absolutely ticking. There will be success and wild success in certain use cases for what we are envisioning as a metaverse. But it's going to take all these things just often take longer and things like that, because that is another part of the story, was they broke out the specific investment uh, in the cost and the revenue in reality, in their reality. In that, when you break that out, that's why they're kind of calling that, some journalists, as you're saying, as a loss, because technically quarterly losses, that's what it is. So, but it is an investment, right? So it's you know man, so how does this affect how you're investing now, right? Puts in and for long-term holds and things like that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, because Mike Isaac, who's the New York Times tech reporter, I'll retweet his blog right now to the Tech News Twitter account. Meta earnings out. Company lost $10 billion investing in Reality Labs, which is their metaverse. It's like, no, what do you mean they lost $10 billion invest? You don't lose money investing in something. This is, again, just a journalist who that's like fundamentally misunderstanding.
R&D is an expense line, right? Is an investment
but you
line.
use the word. I mean, this guy's job is the English language and words. It's not. I mean, I could forgive him if he's like a cruise ship captain or something, but his job is the fucking English language. So when you say the company has lost $10 billion investing in Reality Labs, how do you know that? Do you have a crystal ball that shows that this was a loss 10 years from now? They're investing in it right now. The outcome of whether that was a good investment or bad investment, we won't know for 5 years. So how do you say the company lost $10 billion investing in Reality Labs? Well, yeah, technically they've invested $10 billion, but that isn't. You don't say that's a loss. I mean that's not.
That's a great point.
It didn't go
That's
up
a great point.
it didn't go up in smoke. I mean,
Lost means you don't know where it is, right? They know exactly where it is.
Right. Thank you. Well said, Ben. That's the context I was looking for. Yeah, they know exactly where that $10 billion is at the moment.
Tyler, just to give some context to what Reality Labs is, and probably to the writer who probably didn't do any due diligence, Reality Labs is essentially an entire group that's dedicated to not just the metaverse, but VR, also AR, all the programs within that ecosystem, all the research and development with respects to prototyping, research and development from the scientists, from the programming, all of that you see sort of behind the scenes that really doesn't make it to the front page. All that money is going deep into the investment of the technology. And so some of the programs, at least on the AR side, is really based around the creator economy component, building out Spark AR, building out sort of the functionality behind that. So there's a huge sort of subset of groups within Reality Labs that sort of at front we only hear about Reality Labs as a R&D, but it is deeply expansive. Just not only in the United States, they actually have a group out there in Europe as well. And so they're pouring a lot of money into this internal group. And this is also coupled with not just Reality Labs, they also have AI research, which is probably not taken into account, where they're doing significant research and this is sort of plays into the metaverse as well, because AR glasses are part of that ecosystem. And so they need to do extensive research on machine learning, artificial intelligence, and computer vision, and all that, all that fun jazz that goes into understanding the world and the scene. And and everything that plays in tandem with that. So this is definitely something that they should have done a little bit more research on. You're not going to see sort of a return on that investment or that R&D after the product actually materializes, which is not
Right.
available at the
It's
moment.
honestly, it has tangential similarities to when Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion, and these same journalists were like, "Oh my God, Facebook just wasted $1 billion on Instagram. Oh, can you believe the idiot this guy is?" It's incredibly analogous to that. We don't
Can I?
know. We're not gonna know for a few years if this is a. By the way, Zuckerberg has had a rather stellar track record with these types of moves thus far. With Instagram, Oculus generally has not been a bad move. With WhatsApp, yeah, I mean, just as looking at the dude's shot record, from the free throw line, he's shooting pretty good. I would not be in a position to be highly skeptical of somebody with his record. I certainly as a frickin' tech journalist, I wouldn't be throwing stones at Mark Zuckerberg's ability to call the future. Give me an effing
Tyler,
break here.
Tyler, can I put another couple chess pieces on there? Just because I
Yeah.
worked at HP Labs in the '80s, and I want to follow up on JT's really great kind of dive on what kinds of different things that they're working on at Reality Labs. But something that Bell Labs, HP Labs, and a lot of the great research tech institutions back then kind of realized that they needed to take that huge budget that they were throwing into this big R&D investment. They had to start to slice it up a lot more effectively, and put money into divisions that were tied to revenue and the product lines and business units. And kind of the early research was kind of it's back then it slowly started to see a decline. So now when you're talking about what Facebook is doing, it reminds me of kind of back in those days where, there's a certain amount of R&D, quote unquote R&D, for products, for glasses, for goggles, for this. But the amount, the people that they have there and the different types of research they're doing are about the psychology, the neuroscience, all of there's a bunch of different things they're doing, and a lot of that is tied to having a successful ad sponsored model where you're not just directly asking your customer, hey, pay me 10, $20 a month, a subscription model, right? Because there are other business models that are there. It's a different lane, it's a different business model lane that, I predict that Facebook's going to pivot to that eventually. Is just charge people and get out of my brain kind of type of thing, right? In terms of the privacy and things like that. So that's actually, from an inflection point perspective, that's going to be to me one of the most interesting lanes to see if they do a shift into something like that. If they really, if there's a big lag in this new hardware platform emerging, and as they kind of, like you're saying, so they're jumping across, to make it sound all dramatic, across this chasm. But they are doing well. But on the Instagram investment, and more so than WhatsApp, he blew mobile, right? So let's not just he's yeah
And
he
then
and Bezos, right?
I said
Bezos did
yesterday.
too. So
I said it yesterday. I mean, a lot of people don't recall. Facebook tried to do a smartphone and it failed miserably. I mean, the guy, I'm not saying that he bats 1,000. I'm just saying he has his record of calling future shots is at least respectable enough that better than your average tech journalist. So I kind of take issue with tech journalists insinuating that the guy's out to lunch and is blowing has lost $10 billion on this investment. It's just weird. It's just weird on multiple levels. Anyway, so and by the way,
Tyler, just one quick thing. There was a really nice phrase in there, which was "charge me and get out of my brain." I like that. Having recently moved over to ad blocking DNS for everything, and playing Plants vs Zombies on the iPad with the kids with no ads between levels. You just play and then play, and that pay. Let me pay and then get out of my way. I like. Just wanted to call out that there's a really insidious ad and data driven like nature to so many things these days that you often can't opt out of. So.
Ben, I'm glad that you brought that up. I mean, you're an expert in games, right? So, as I've seen this quote unquote social game of Facebook emerge with their business model, I thought, man, that kid's leaving so much money on the table. If you look back at EverQuest and some of these MMO big massive social games, Facebook is a social game. If you offer enough value to your customer, you should be able to charge them something. So. Yeah, no, that's get out of my brain. It's time.
So the next big topic of the day is the blockchain bridge wormhole confirms a hacker stole $322 million of Ethereum and moves its site into maintenance mode. Wormhole is offering a $10 million bug bounty. A threat actor has abused a vulnerability in the Wormhole cryptocurrency platform to steal an estimated $322 million of Ether currency. Well, that doesn't help. The attack took place earlier today and impacted Wormhole Portal, a web-based app, also known as a blockchain bridge, that allows users to convert one form of cryptocurrency into another. Bridge portals use smart contracts on the Ethereum blockchain to convert and input cryptocurrency into a temporary internal token, which they later convert into the user's desired output currency. The attacker is believed to have exploited this process to trick the Wormhole project into releasing Ether and Solana coins far beyond the input they initially provided. According to reports, the attacker stole crypto assets worth $322.8 million at the time of the attack, and which have depreciated to $294 million due to price fluctuations following the hack. While a Wormhole spokesperson has not returned a request for comment on today's incident, the company has confirmed the attack earlier today on Twitter and has put its site into maintenance mode while it investigates the incidents. The Wormhole network is down for maintenance as we look into potential exploit. Maybe Ben might be the best person, although I wager heavily that it will not be a strong endorsement for these types of.
Well,
Tyler, sorry, is it okay to ask a question about the previous article, or we have moved?
Sure, go ahead.
I saw the separation between the two, and the hardware, the lab part of Facebook is now the reality lab is separately, like it's kind of mentioned separately. So that separation of business into two, wouldn't that affect the earning initially, just to like temporarily?
Yeah, but that's mainly just so to try and separate in the minds of investors this investment that they're making, that it isn't that it shouldn't weigh on the traditional if you bundled it together, it looks like Facebook's sucking, when in fact if you carve it out, as we say, that their traditional business is still relatively intact, and that they want this to be perceived as an investment in a whole new area, which it is, and that is what it is. But and then as May was with us at the start of May, and Ben and anyone else have a hot take on the Wormhole hack, I guess it's to be continued, because
I have a simple one.
What's that?
I'm curious to see if this is going to be another bailed out situation, similar to the way Solana had a problem and we had a hack like months ago. So I'm just curious. I mean, and I'm not going to be, don't start quoting me on terms I'm using. I'm like doing multiple things at once. But there was a disruption in Solana back in the day, and they fixed it right away. But it's also a VC-backed firm. So like Solana is not decentralized, it's centralized. So I'm quite curious if OKX and the other investors in Solana will recoup the loss by covering it again. That's it.
Okay. Anyone else with a take? My buddy Mark Jeffrey, who's been in this for a minute, who joined us in a Twitter stage on one of the first tech news around the world we did with the Twitter Space edition. And he says, stolen from Solana's Wormhole bridge, between the ongoing continual chain crashes and now this, Solana is not having a good time. There are now questions as to whether Solana Ethereum is now backed buy anything since the collateral was stolen.
So my brief take, Tyler, would be this fundamentally there has to be that vulnerability there, and I'm not surprised it got exploited, because anything that tries to interchange between two blockchains is invoking an oracle. It's involving something that is not local only to one blockchain, and therefore there's trust involved, and therefore there's a weak point. So it doesn't surprise me. I'm surprised slightly more of these things don't happen, but maybe the smaller ones don't hit the press, the odd million here and there. I don't know if there's a long tail of those that don't hit the press, but
to that point, is anyone familiar with our friend CoffeeZilla? Perhaps not. I should ping him in.
Oh yes, I love him.
I do too. Matter of fact, let's ping him in. And CoffeeZilla, I imagine he keeps the same name in Clubhouse. He does that. I just got him here. Let's see if he'll join us here in Tech News. CoffeeZilla has a YouTube channel where he exposes scammers and such, and lately there's been quite a bit in the crypto space, and he just full-on busted a YouTube influencer who just rug pulled his fans on his own coin to the tune of $300,000. And he admits it very openly, that although he's saying it's not a full rug pull because he left 40,000 in the liquidity pool, which is 10%. So he rug pulled 90%, and he's very brash about it, saying, "Yeah, well, I'm going to keep it, and so what? And it is what it is." And but it was CoffeeZilla who tracked it down and said, "Well, hey, wait a minute. You said you were not going to do this, and it's on camera when you were part of a video call with multiple people when you had the idea to even do this, and where he's on camera, weeks ago being like, wait a minute, you mean I could do this and make $1 million in a few weeks just by doing that?" And he got super excited, and then he swore, and then it was so obvious that as he was developing his own coin, people are like, wait a minute, you're on video a few weeks ago rubbing your hands and chopping your lips about making $1 million in a week by doing this, and now you're doing it. And he's like, yeah, no, that was a joke. I was joking. That was a joke. Come on, no, that was just totally a joke. Right, okay, sure. And now he's done it. So yeah.
No,
it's
I
sad
was
that
just
people.
gonna say that, things like this, and then, the South African brothers who disappeared with billions, and all those things where the most African leaders who banned cryptocurrency in most African countries say, you see why we did this? And I think that's why when you have new technology and you don't have a really well thought out regulatory framework, and where you are also trying to protect consumers, these things happen, and then and the regulators come back and say, yeah, this is why we're banning it, and we're going to keep on banning it. So it's quite a bit sad.
So keep an eye out for CoffeeZilla. I just pinged him on Clubhouse.
Yeah, Tyler, there's also a Gizmodo article, and I'm trying to figure out how to get the exact article to ping you guys, but it's Gizmodo, shows the 7 top scammers on an NFT artists show rug pulls. So it's the 7 top rug pulls in January, total 4 million, and that doesn't count hacks. It's just the rug pulls. And the companies that sell NFTs get everyone to invest in their crypto and then disappear. So I'm trying to send you that link.
So it looks like Alexandra, who normally joins us on stage, and also Nicholas are both talking about Solana and the wormhole. And so hopefully they can jump up on stage and share their perspectives on this, because I imagine they both usually have very interesting insights on these types of topics precisely. Let's see here. I just need to get them the link to the room here. There we go. Here we go. There it is. Okay. Hopefully they get that. So if they can jump in, just let me know. So while we're waiting for Alexandra and Nicholas to jump in here, the next story, the third biggest story, is the Los Angeles Times says they have sources that in a Spotify staff meeting in the LA office, So it makes sense. They might have sources in LA, at the LA office. That the CEO, Daniel Ek, said that Spotify sees itself as a platform for Joe Rogan's podcast, not a publisher of Joe Rogan's podcast. And that is an incredibly important distinction for those who understand Section 230, which is they don't want to be perceived as editorializing or publishing. They want to be seen as a platform, because if you're a platform, you get protections. You are not responsible for the content. If you are a publisher, you are responsible for the content, and they don't want to be legally responsible for the content, and which nor does YouTube, nor does Facebook, nor does anybody. They all want to be perceived as platforms. So that's not much of a surprise that they're taking that position. And it's honestly true, because they're going to try and have eventually every podcast on the planet on their platform, which makes it similar to YouTube. And in that case, you're not you're not editorializing or publishing, you're a platform, and anyone is welcome more or less to do that as long as they follow the platform's guidelines or policies. So, but there was a perhaps more important statement in the past 24 hours by Spotify. Let me find it very briefly. It was going by memory while I find the article. That Spotify I think it's because they just had their quarter earnings report, and in fact, I'm sure they did. Yes, they did, and with revenue of 2.7 billion euros, up 24% year over year, very respectable. 406 million monthly active users. That's like double Twitter, by the way. That's pretty impressive, I gotta say. Up 18% year over year, also very respectable. And ad-supported revenue of about 400 million euros or $500 million, up 40% year over year. That's really impressive. 40% year over year growth on the ad revenue means their ad network is growing very nicely at 40% per year, and a record 15% of total revenue. And they made a statement in one of the statements that was made during the quarter earnings report was that Spotify is now kind of semi-officially, verbally, a creator platform, that they see themselves as part of the creator economy, which makes all the sense in the world, precisely in the ways that I've been saying. The huge opportunity that Spotify has. And in fact, Daniel did say that as well, that they're just scratching the surface on the creator economy opportunities that Spotify could benefit from. I agree 1,000%, as full transparency as a Spotify shareholder. So it's because when you think of the creator economy, and you have the creators on Twitter, and you have creators on YouTube, and you have creators on Pinterest, and you have creators on Instagram, and then you could think of everybody on Spotify as creators. They just happen to be some of the biggest creators in the history of creation. You know, like Jay-Z and Beyonce and Paul McCartney and every musician you've ever heard of. That's a pretty stellar effing list of creators, if you ask me. And that could be their platform of choice, because they're already connected to all their freaking fans over there, y'all. So if you enable that as a platform for them to get monetized in additional ways, which we already know that's coming with them, there's just a ridiculous amount of opportunity under the covers there to be unleashed how and when they wish to. And they're starting to do those things, and they're testing those things out, and it's very exciting. And that's why I think Daniel sounds very confident, even in the midst of this Joe Rogan brouhaha of late, which clearly the journalists on the earnings call wanted to kind of poke him about. He's still rather unshakable, because he knows how bright the future still is, given their position with all of the artists on that platform, and not just artists, but very engaged artists. Like, artists track their Spotify analytics religiously. They're very, very engaged with their audiences on Spotify, and now they're going to have a new way to be even far more interactive and directly engaging with their fans through the platform. And watch out there's going to be huge opportunities there. So anyway,
Tyler, I think with the creator economy, although, like you said, there is huge opportunity, but there are also a lot of pitfalls that we've seen it. So I think companies really, really need to figure out and kind of. I don't know, walk a tightrope and maybe even come up with something that can uniquely make them quite different. Because I think this creator economy can actually be also, run down just like that overnight if a lot of people in a mass just disappear. And those things can happen if they're not careful, right? Because you're really depending on millions of subscribers and millions of consumers that are putting their money based on who they like and what they like and things like that. So I think knowing that what's happening with anyone on your platform can be a disaster. I think companies would, to me, I think would be way ahead if they envision the future and then come up and have a value as well that doesn't put them in a very sticky situation. Because I think if they are hands off, we have seen what Facebook has lost so much of the trust, and that now they are struggling because I think they just found a way to just profit and have billions of subscribers without worrying about, oh, you know what, we could do this. They push through a lot of problems that consumers complained about, users complained about, but then now they may be paying for that. Really, we just saw it. So that trust factor may be a big player in their metaverse vision in the future, with the NFT community, not trusting them. All those things will play in the future if they don't really find that really sticky balance.
yeah, but imagine that Spotify gets into the NFT game for audio, and it makes it easy for the artist to mint NFTs, and they, get some piece of it. It could be just so ridiculously huge, it's hard to imagine.
Tyler, do you think that Spotify is kind of also kind of following a little bit the lead of what Netflix did, how they started and then they went into, becoming a
Bit,
creator company themselves?
bit. There's definitely some ways to think of Spotify and Netflix in playing in the same universe for sure. So the next big story. Oh, and by the way, I thank you to BB for finding the story. I pinned it to the top of the Clubhouse room, and it was from The Verge, and the title correctly says Spotify sees itself as a creator company now. Spotify says it's a creator company now. As I kind of have
And
been,
also,
yeah,
just 1 second, as you're just saying this, so if they do that with NFTs, I just started thinking about all these Netflix originals, what they'll be able to do with maybe some of the
amen,
music and the
amen.
title, the title shots of the, or even parts of um, their films and programs that they're making.
Yeah. So,
So Tyler.
yeah,
Oh wait.
go ahead, Cheryl.
Wow.
Cheryl,
There's your metaverse.
you
I
fell
think
into
that
it.
was a Spotify remix from
Yeah,
Cheryl.
I was so excited, so I opened the book. Anyhow, um, if this is the case, right?
Cheryl, you can't have both microphones open at the same time.
Yeah, you can't. You only one at a time.
So pick one microphone because you're in both. Oh boy. Okay, we'll come back to you, Cheryl. So,
No,
what?
I told you my mouse is not working well. Anyhow,
Tyler, you're muted.
just right now, that means is it official? They are at their platform not a publisher? Because remember the other day you
And
were
I think
discussing about
he's
the
trying to fix maybe
the
the
Section 230.
echo. Maybe we're all in the metaverse without
Hold
being
on, Nessie.
told.
I can hear Cheryl.
Yeah,
It's fine.
okay,
BB,
metaverse.
hold on, BB. Hold on. Cheryl was trying to talk here. Go ahead, Cheryl.
No, I'm just saying, remember the other day you guys were discussing about the Section 230. So right
Tyler and
now,
Cheryl can both hear
just
you
remember my
guys.
question about the platform versus publisher.
Hold on.
Yeah, they're both muted. Somebody probably has to.
Somebody muted
Interesting.
Cheryl and I? That's not really possible.
Let me try them on Twitter.
So now we cannot be heard on Clubhouse.
Tyler, I think you just need to unmute yourself.
Mic check.
Okay, now you're okay.
Thank you. Okay, sorry. So I don't know. I don't really care. It's kind of a boring issue. They're not. They are a platform. They're not a public.
Right. So if they are a platform, they cannot do moderation, because if they do moderation, they will lose the safe harbor, right?
To a degree, yes. If somebody violates their policies, then of course they can remove them for that.
Yeah, but obviously, Joe Rogan didn't, right?
We don't know. I don't know what their policies are. They might have
I
policies.
think I read an article that they say he doesn't fall into the breach of the policy.
Okay, then there it is. So the next big story is that Nintendo reports 10.67 million Switch sales in Q3. Who cares? Next is a major British snack producer called KP Snacks has been hit by a ransomware impacting supplies of many snacks to supermarkets in the UK. There you go. They got you right where they want you now. They got your snacks. Wow. You'll be crying for mercy in no time. The next is a report that Microsoft scrapped plans for a HoloLens 3 in 2021, shifting instead to a mixed reality device with Samsung and leaving the HoloLens team inflamed. Microsoft turned heads when it first introduced HoloLens and blah, blah, blah. Okay, maybe true. Next is Reuters says they have sources that Israeli surveillance company called Quadream used the zero-click forced entry exploit to access iPhones in 2021. Forced entry was also used by NSO Group, a flaw in Apple software exploited by Israeli surveillance firm NSO Group to break into iPhones was simultaneously abused by another Israeli surveillance company called Quadream. And Reuters is saying that this is an exclusive iPhone flaw exploited by second Israeli spy firm sources. So this gets kind of interesting. I think I know what's going on here. I think Pegasus knows that it might get quarantined, for lack of a better word, politically, and maybe they might be handing off the secret sauce, the back door that they figured out, to another company to keep the party going. Potentially. This is my own tinfoil hat theory at the moment. So a flaw in Apple's software exploited by NSO Group to break into iPhones in 2021 was simultaneously abused by a competing company, according to 5 people familiar with the matter. Quadream, the sources said, is a smaller and lower profile Israeli firm that also develops smartphone hacking tools intended for government clients. Oh, gee, what a coincidence. The two rival businesses gained the same ability last year to remotely break into iPhones, according to the 5 sources, meaning that both firms could compromise Apple phones without the owner needing to open a malicious link. The two firms employed the same sophisticated hacking technique, known as a zero-day, which shows that phones are more vulnerable to powerful digital spying tools than the industry will admit, one expert said. Quote, people want to believe they're secure, and phone companies want you to believe they're secure. What we've learned is they're not, says Dave Eitel, a partner at a cybersecurity firm. Experts analyzing intrusions engineered by NSO Group and Quadream since last year believe the two companies used very similar software exploits known as forced entry to hijack iPhones. An exploit is computer code designed to leverage a set of specific who cares. The analyst believes that NSO and Quadream's exploits were similar because they leveraged many of the same vulnerabilities hidden deep inside Apple's instant messaging platform and used a comparable approach to plant malicious software in targeted devices, according to the 3 sources. A security researcher with digital watchdog Citizen Lab, who has been studying both companies' hacking tools, told Reuters that Quadream's zero capabilities seemed on par with NSO's. Reuters made repeated attempts to reach Quadream for comment, sending messages to executives and business partners as a Reuters journalist last week visited Quadream's office in the Tel Aviv suburb of Ramat Gan, but no one answered the door. Israeli lawyer Vivek Dank, whose email was listed on Quadream's corporate registration form, also did not return repeated messages. An Apple spokesperson declined to comment on Quadream or say what, if any, action they plan to take with regard to the company. Now, here's where my conspiracy theory that I said out loud before I even read the article now sounds even more feasible. Because Apple is suing NSO Group. The America is banning NSO Group, and all of the political legal powers are aligning against it to squash it kind of legally because they can't defeat it technically. And so this is sort of, in rugby, when you're running down the field and someone's going to come at you and knock the shit out of you, you hand the ball to your teammate to run forward with the ball, to continue making money and selling it legally. Because this new company, Quadream, that no one's ever heard of, is not being sued by Apple, is not banned by America, and countries around the world, even American allies, can continue to do business with Quadream for the time being. What are the odds that these... By the way, Tel Aviv cybersecurity community, they all know each other intimately. We're not talking about Mexico City, like a massive metropolis here. Like Tel Aviv, it's beautiful, don't get me wrong. Some of the best weekends of my life were in Tel Aviv. Love the place. Thought of moving there, honestly, right next to the beach there, next to Jaffa, the old part by the clock tower. Gorgeous beach they have there. Amazing food. One of the best. I fell in love with the place. But it's small. That's a relatively tiny place. And if you're a cybersecurity, world-leading cybersecurity experts in a small town, you don't think they know each other and talk to each other? Are you kidding me? I think I met everyone in that community in a weekend. You don't think the people who are born and raised there that are doing the exact same stuff know each other intimately? Give me a break. So perhaps explains why they're unwilling to make even a hint of a ghost of a comment. That's why they're afraid to even answer the door when the journalist knocks on the front door. Because any progress that's made by the journalist will crack this wide open. So forced entry is viewed anyway. So the article goes on about the technical details, but anyway, we'll see. We'll see how this shakes out. Next topic. Silence. Is my mic on? Cheryl, is my mic on?
No, I just have a lot of unpopular opinions on this about why. I mean, personally, I think it should be seen as a threat when when companies like this are allowed to break into an American company's programs or hardware devices. It should be seen as a threat. Just because they are allies now doesn't mean they're going to be allies in the future. They won't, or this tech won't be sold to someone else. So I hope Apple really comes through on this.
To be continued, no doubt. Well, there will be an update, no doubt. So the next one is a company called Pixelvault, a decentralized entertainment startup focused on an NFT collection of superheroes, raises $100 million from 01 advisors. That's nice. Bloomberg says Apple sold 2.3 million iPhones in India in Q4. That's a lot of iPhones for 3 months in one country, up 34% year over year. And Xiaomi sold 9.3 million. Well, yeah, they're the better specs at half the price, but comes with a little bunch of surprises built in. And Samsung sold 7.2 million, down 8%. So it's just a coverage of the smartphone sales of India. That's nice. GameStop plans to launch an NFT marketplace in 2022 built on the Ethereum-based Immutable X platform and is creating a $100 million fund for game developers. That's a pivot. A game retail. Ben, you might have a thought on this. It's kind of your neck of the woods.
Sorry, I briefly popped out. What's the one sentence summary? I might better catch up.
The GameStop pivoting to launch an NFT marketplace with a $100 million fund for game developers.
I'd probably just say desperate times call for desperate measures for them, but yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, fair enough. Next, Financial Times says they have sources that a company called Yuga Labs, the startup behind the Bored Ape Yacht Club NFTs, is in talks to raise funds from Andreessen Horowitz at a $4 to $5 billion valuation. Its first outside funding. NFT pioneer Yuga Labs seeking a $4 to $5 billion valuation from Andreessen Horowitz. And Wired is the next one. Game companies are increasingly using big gameplay data sets to gain insight into what players like, how they play, what they're likely to spend money on, and more. Makes, honestly, tons of sense. Video game companies, if they put cameras on the front of the devices, as they are known to do, and microphones, as they certainly could do, and there's certainly a whole bunch of stuff they could start to figure out from the controls and how the controller's used, and they could build a very robust ad network. I don't know why they haven't. Honestly, they are the technology is advancing with eye trackers and cameras and microphones that games, and especially the game platforms like the Xboxes and the PlayStations, could definitely build some very serious ad networks that could be very.
It'll be serious pushback in the gaming community
Yeah.
if they found
No,
out that they were turned into that.
not if it not if PlayStation 5s are free now. Not if they're like, hey, you want it? Hey, guess what? We got great news.
Oh, well, then yeah.
PS6s are free. Everybody, come and get them. I don't think many people would object. It's the old I agree. I clicked I agree. Opt in. That old game. Next one is
Tyler, a short one
yes,
regarding the thing that you have tagged on the top. We discussed this, you and me, the other day. This with the exploited and the other spyware company compared to our Pegasus friends. There are actually 4 firms that I know of that actually is using these exploits right now.
right.
And yeah.
Yes, and can you say more about what we were DMing about?
The thing is here that I have sources, to use your term, that gives me a list of people that are infected with some of these ones. And I actually have a list that I match them against friends and family, and I alert them as well as I alert a few others as well when I get hold of them. Some of them don't believe you when you contact them and say, hi, with their indications, they say, who are you and why are you calling me?
Right.
So the thing is here that we have a bit of an uphill to actually get alerted, and some of them have been on the list for a year or more now, and still there. And we know that there have been messages delivered to them, but they are still on the list.
Mm. And to that point, Finland today is letting it be known that several of their diplomats were found to be compromised by Pegasus.
Yeah, there are the 358 is the phone number, the international phone number for Finland, and I can see there is 18 hits on 358. As of now, it's 27 hits on 46, which is Sweden. It's 12 for Norway and 18 for Denmark.
I hope a journalist gets in touch with you.
They don't, seriously, they don't, even the journalists that we found, the Swedish journalists that we have found and contacted, they were not interested.
It's so weird.
It's part of the business. Yeah, right.
So, there's Jeff G's North Korea hacked him, so he took down North Korea's internet story from Wired. Thank you for that one, Jeff G. So the next big story here is, speaking of Sweden, honestly, this is random coincidence that Johan was just talking about Sweden. And this is from TechCrunch, from Ingrid Lunden, which that's a Swedish name if ever there was one. And it says Sweden-based Anotel, which helps assess the performance of autonomous systems perceptions, raises $24 million by Nordic Ninja, who are friends, actually. And so that's great. A Swedish-based company which helps assess the performance of autonomous driving system perception. That's great. Next up is also a story from Ingrid Lunden. She's two in a row. Germany-based Flip, a chat app for frontline workers, raises 30 million. And what else is good? It's a whole bunch of fundraising announcements as usual that we will circle back to, and some other quarter earnings reports and whatnot. But now we get to get into the tweets, as we always do. And one of the big tweets today is from PT Yoder from Newsweek that an oil tanker that can carry 2 million barrels of oil, that's more than a few barrels, 2 million, explodes at sea. The vessel had 10 crew members on board, the Nigerian company that owns the ship said. And the question that you should be asking yourself right now is, was a drone involved? Trinity Spirit oil tanker carrying 2 million barrels explodes at sea. An explosion has rocked an oil production vessel off the coast of Nigeria. Dramatic footage shared on social media shows the Trinity Spirit oil tanker on fire and apparently sinking, with thick plumes of black smoke billowing in the sky. The vessel is floating production. Now, the other question that should be going through your mind is, where was this tanker en route to? Meaning, who was the purchaser of the oil? And who's the likely attacker? Because, by the way, as you've heard me say, those who join us every day know I've been saying repeatedly that is going to become one of the interesting moves on the geopolitical chessboard, and why I keep telling you to move to a country that has its own energy and isn't importing energy. Because these oil tankers, here's the big picture for 2 seconds for those who've not heard this rant. Many countries have to import lots of oil through oil tankers such as this. If you happen to live in one of those countries, take note of what I'm about to say next, because that means you're energy dependent on foreign oil, and that foreign oil arrives through these oil tankers, which can be wiped out now with a $200 commercial pedestrian drone. So, with a lot of plausible deniability, and that means those things are going to become very ripe targets if we ever turn into a geopolitically unstable scenario, which is becoming more and more feasible by the weeks as the weeks go on. The vessel is capable of 2 million. There is videos of it sinking. In a press release, the company's executive confirmed the vessel, anchored to Nigeria's oil field, caught fire after an explosion early Wednesday morning. It was at sea, and there was an explosion. There were no immediate reports of fatalities. It had 10 crews on board. They said investigations were underway to establish the cause of the explosion. He said attempts to contain the situation were being made with help of local communities. The cause of the explosion is currently being investigated, and we are working with necessary parties to contain the situation. At this time, there are no reported fatalities, but we confirmed that there were 10 crew on board the vessel prior to the incident, and we're prioritizing investigations, blah, blah, blah. We appreciate the assistance provided to us. We have duly notified all relevant authorities, and we appeal to the members of the public to stay away from the area while our team continue to monitor the situation and update all stakeholders, blah, blah, blah. It was not immediately clear how much oil was being held on the vessel. It comes after a well-owned Nigerian and state-run NNPC blew in November, spewing more than 20,000 barrels of oil a day into the surrounding river. That incident was described as being like a Hiroshima site by Nigeria's Minister of State for the Environment. So this is
it had the potential of carrying 20 million. It didn't say that 20 million.
Right. They haven't revealed how much was on it, but they did just reveal that this is the second time in a short time frame. Just make note. I'm more than happy to go on the record yet again that these will be the pawns on the chessboard of the next geopolitical instabilities, where rather than having actual hot conflict, you just start cutting off each other's critical supply of energy, food, and water. And so watch out. There's going to be a lot more.
One of the things, one of the things here is with the energy crisis on the rise in Europe and the LNG, liquid natural gas, that is actually flowing from Russia
Yeah.
into Germany, for example, right now through the Nord Stream. One of the things here is that what I anticipate is that we will see a large ship of energy exploding.
Well, you bring up an interesting point. Where Russia's already kind of semi weaponizing the gas pipeline into Germany, as America warned that they would do, and they now have done, as everyone in Germany now well knows. So yeah, it can happen even without the tankers.
And like you said, Tyler, I mean, if this, depending on which country it was going towards, and if this continues to happen with these shortages, there's going to be massive, price hikes, and for things that people don't have access to or won't, and
Already is.
price hikes.
Johan,
And
can
it
you?
already has.
Yeah,
And it already has in these price hikes. And, they could certainly create some kind of a mass protest from the people not being able to, not having any trust or not having faith in their governments. And so, I mean, this
already.
this is also
Yeah.
the potential of a toppling of a government.
No. It's not potential. It's already happened. Johan, a Swedish friend of mine from Stockholm today, told me that the cost of fuel in Sweden is now double what it was just a couple of years ago at the local gas stations. Paging Johan, who was just on Johan Fisher. Johan, Earth to Johan.
But the same is with the US, right? 2 years ago, beginning of the corona closures and everything, the prices went really down low everywhere. Now we're almost over $4 a gallon. It's almost doubled in the
Yeah,
US.
it's far more than that. It's £2. Is it €2 per liter, which would make around what, $8 a gallon?
Wow, we're lucky here. But the US is the largest oil producing country in the world now, so.
Anywho, next tweet is from Joe Williams, and it was actually one of the big stories yesterday, but it was so good it's worth repeating today for anyone who might have missed it, because it's kind of a semi-historical moment that DeepMind, the AI team out of London that Google acquired years ago, considered one of the best in biz, has made software, an AI that writes software, that writes code, computer code, that rivals average human coders in coding challenges. In fact, it participated in the coding challenge and beat most of the participants. And it's not a human; it's an AI who's writing above average, although about average level human code currently. And the obvious insinuation, if you know anything about AI, it's not going to remain average for long, and it will continue to improve at a much faster rate than the humans improve. So thank you for that reminder. Francine Hardaway has the next one from Financial Times. Australia backs rare earths mine to reduce China's supply dominance. A $100 million project finance for Yangibana, expected to feed Europe's automotive sector. And indeed, we're already at the stage where these rare earth metals are likely to become tinder for additional conflict. Yeah, Francine, you have additional points to make on this, I assume.
No, I forwarded it on from a nice guy named Anthony DeMarco, who said to me, I think that the tech news room would be interested in this.
Yeah.
And I decided it would be. So I forwarded it on. I thought it was interesting, but I sure don't have anything original.
Ah, well, I mean,
I want to know why you went so quickly over Pixelvault, which I think is a really important funding. But I'll let you go back to that.
Sure, we can circle back to that. But on the topic of rare earths, this article says the Australian government has backed a rare earths mine as the country ramps up production to challenge Chinese dominance of the critical minerals used in magnets for electric vehicles, wind turbines, and smartphones. China has long dominated the supply of those minerals, But its trade war with the US has forced the global manufacturing industry to search for alternative sources. The Australian government has identified rare earths as a strategic industry and established funds to support companies breaking into the market. On Wednesday, it agreed to a $100 million project financing loan to the Yangibana rare earths mine in the Gascoyne region, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, of Western Australia that is being established. The loan will act as an anchor, which is aiming to raise up to $400 million in debt for the project. The company is set to become Australia's second biggest exporter of rare earth metals, the et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I mean, rare earth
Yeah,
mining.
Colin, sorry, Tyler, I heard an article on this yesterday about the mining. It's for cobalt, and it's the question is like, because if we're moving from mining coal and using gas to electric takes cobalt right now. They're trying to I think Elon Musk is actually trying to shift to another metal, but they're like here in the U.S. they're revitalizing mines that like damaged entire towns because they're so toxic. I think in Idaho, and I think the one in Western Australia they said is going to be done much better, and U.S. should follow their practices in how they're doing it. But yeah, all this mining for these metals for batteries, etc., is going to be interesting, as you're noting.
For sure. So, circling back to the Pixelvault fundraising, a decentralized entertainment startup focused on an NFT collection of superheroes raises $100 million. And what is it about it that caught your fancy, Francine? Investors' latest NFT bet is on a startup called Pixelvault, a massive NFT collection of superheroes that has the goal of growing into a decentralized, Marvel-esque empire. The NFT startup tells TechCrunch it has closed a whopping $100 million in funding from Adam Bain, and Dick Costello, those two folks, those two gentlemen, essentially ran Twitter for the bulk of.
Right, and the other person was Mike Lazaro's VC firm, and Mike Lazaro co-founded Buddy Media, and so these are important investors.
Mhm.
And the project, which is called CryptoPunks, already has a DAO and already has all its governance and already is well on the way toward producing its comic books. Anyway, I'm not usually attracted to comic sites, but this one is called Punks and it's really very, of course they're all called Punks, but this it was extremely interesting. And I thought it was an interesting coming together of some former social media people into Web3.
Yeah. The provider of most of those punks was a crypto investor pseudonymously. Oh, it says the company's first launch back in May began before it was actually a company, featuring a drop of thousands of comic books, both real and digital, that featured characters from the CryptoPunks world. Users had the option of exchanging the comic NFT over a short period for a spot in Pixelvault's founders DAO, a crypto collective which gave them ownership in a substantial collection of NFT artwork, which included a number of CryptoPunk NFTs worth millions at current prices that were the main characters of the Pixelvault comic. Since the initial Punks comic release, the Pixelvault team has leaned into the comic book aesthetic, tapping some of the veteran artists behind the comic to create a larger collection of superhero NFTs, which the team hopes to turn into a broader media universe. The team is looking to balance maintaining IP rights with encouraging the community to use and promote the meta-hero art, maintaining IP rights to 146 of the core character NFTs while allowing wide reuse of thousands of generative characters. They have the mandate to build a decentralized Disney, which in my mind means co-creation and co-ownership with avid fans. In order to hold you to task, you don't participate in the economics, but participate in the appreciation of their characters that are in this world. And that was a quote from Michael Lazaro, as you said, Francis.
Hey, Tyler. Um, This is David on the Clubhouse side. So it sounds like they're really unveiling their strategy, which is really interesting. But that's a very, very common strategy. What was interesting? Do they have in the article how many prior to all the NFT art market opportunity? Do they have? Was it a comic book? Was there a subscription? I mean, was there like a real franchise there that had a following?
Mm, yeah, well, the CryptoPunks is a well-known NFT project that they kind of turned into a comic book. That's how I interpreted what we just read there. Francine, think?
Right.
Yeah,
Yes. That's what they did.
right.
Right. So comic books and Dr. Francine, that's great because there's a lot of creative creative people doing these illustrations and things like that. So it'll be very interesting to see how many of these actually get traction. Because I mean, if you just roll back the clock, even a fistful of years prior to that, lots of these hero and just franchises more generally, they had all kinds of business opportunities, lines of revenue as you start to take a popular character across different media forms. That's what Eisner famously did that when as he built Disney and kind of built the modern day of Disney.
Yeah, that's why he's saying a decentralized Disney. That's what I think, and it's very fascinating because Disney holds on to its intellectual property so firmly that everybody is just a spectator in Disney's world, whereas Web3 is about everybody being a participant. So anyway, I like the project myself.
Okay, next up is from L, has two in a row here. The first is scientists develop insect-sized flying robots with flapping wings. A new drive system for flapping wing autonomous robots has been developed using a new method. Lovely. And the next is scientists engineer new material that can absorb and release enormous amounts of energy. Sounds like something out of Marvel Comics or the X-Men or something. A team of researchers recently announced that they had engineered a new rubber-like solid substance that has the capabilities of absorbing and releasing enormous amounts of energy, like Superman's suit or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very excited about that, but then I started thinking about the practical applications for something like that and how it could be abused. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, which comic book hero would that be exactly? The next one's from BB from South China Morning Post. That JD.com founder, which is one of the world's biggest e-commerce companies, think Amazon of China, donates $2 billion to charity amid China's tech crackdown, or what Beijing calls common prosperity. So the Chinese tech tycoon Richard Liu of JD.com donates shares worth $2 billion amid Beijing's pursuit of common prosperity. And it'd be interesting if Western journalists would cover what's really going on here. Because what it appears to be, and I would love to be told what's really going on here by people who really have God's truth on this, that the CCP is forcing the tech tycoons to liquidate their net worth for the common prosperity. But the
On the
real
other
question,
hand,
yeah,
they're trying to take power with their own people.
yeah, there is a bit of a power shift going on there. And BB has the next one about Apple's latest patent shows a special car sunroof system. So why is Apple patenting a special car sunroof? The Apple patented sunroof has variable optical or opacity glass. It also shows the sunroof opens in sequence with side windows, while current cars with similar technologies have a fixed sunroof. What does that mean exactly? A variable opacity glass. That means like what are those glasses that?
It can change the color, so it can change from transparency from the shades by the electricity. And
Right.
then, yeah. And I think this pattern in this news, it says the difference is prior to this, the shades cannot be moved. So this one is and can be how to say that the glass will fix.
Silicon cars.
Yeah. So yeah. So it's a trackable. Yes. So but that means Apple's planning their Apple Car, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And it also means that it's probably meant to be experienced like a normal car, where although you'll be looking up through the transparent glass, or that can be made to be. Yeah, I can imagine Apple's going to employ a whole lot of glass. For those who don't know, or anyone who's ever been to an Apple store knows, or especially people who go to lots of Apple stores know, especially the Hong Kong store, Apple loves glass, and Apple's one of the best, most advanced users of glass in architecture, and it's very synonymous with its brand from a retail perspective. So it would not be a surprise that they would have outstanding sort of glass-like features in their car. So this makes all the sense in the world. Yes, Jeremiah, welcome back to Tech News Around the World. Great to see you, sir.
Hello, family.
Hey.
Very briefly, I have another thing to go to in a few minutes, but I think I spotted something that looks very interesting in Cupertino yesterday.
What's that?
And for those, if you go to Twitter Spaces,
by the way, hold the thought, because for those who don't know, Cupertino is ground zero for Apple. That's where Apple's global headquarters is. And it's for people from the region, like Jeremiah and myself to some degree, we just assume the world knows Cupertino is synonymous with Apple. Like those words are almost interchangeable, by the way.
Well, they make the time zone in the apps around Cupertino, so I thought people start to realize the connection.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Cupertino is the headquarters of the Apple spaceship, the round UFO, and I was right next to the headquarters at a shopping center, and I spotted this. Look at that! Look at that tweet. Now zoom into the car. Click on the tweet and look at the car.
Okay, we're looking at
up.
Yeah, Jeremiah just shared a tweet at the top of the Tech Newsroom in. Oh wow!
Twitter.
Yeah, into that you took that photo.
This is my photo. I took the photo.
Great photo.
So thank you. If you NFT it, I want 5% royalties.
Right.
Now, a couple of things. First of all, we know that Apple is using Lexus.
Right.
Lexi.
Right.
We already know that.
Right.
And now look at the bottom sensors. They're starting to get embedded. Right. Uh-huh. And that's an interesting, we're seeing that around multiple cars that they're sticking out. It's kind of like interesting, early protozoa, right? They used to have these all large antennas and they became more advanced and evolved, and then the eyes became embedded, right? The sensors. So the same thing is happening with self-driving cars, just like early protozoa. Now we know that Apple cares a lot about design, and they love white, they love black. Okay, so we don't know who created the self-driving car, but look at the top.
Yeah,
Tyler, what does the top look like?
It looks like an iPhone on top of a car.
It looks like an iPhone 4, literally an 8-foot iPhone 4 on top.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it looks like.
Okay, that's all I came here to share.
Well, so I like where you're going with this. And did you stick around with the driver wearing a black turtleneck by chance?
What driver?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's clearly an Apple-ish thing right there.
I mean, we know they're using the Lexus.
Twitter.
So,
well, yeah, but
Yeah, this is a Lexus, right?
Yeah.
That's well done. That's really cool. I imagine that journalists would be very eager to share that.
Yeah, I better tag in like Jalopnik and the other ones who look at the. Yeah, I'll tweet them. I'll tweet at them.
Cheryl, can you retweet that to the Tech News Twitter account from inside the Twitter space there?
Yes.
Jeremiah, would you prefer? Can we pin Jeremiah's tweet to the top of the Tech Newsroom? I think we can. Yeah. Yes, we can. Hold on. I'll do that right now. Give me 2 seconds here. So, Jeremiah, there it is. Okay. There we go. I'm retweeting it to the top of the Tech News Twitter account right now, and I will pin it to the top of the Clubhouse room. so everyone else can click on it and see Jeremiah and follow Jeremiah on Twitter, who's brilliant.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Tyler, would you want an iPhone? I'm sorry, an Apple self-driving car? Would you want that?
Yeah. Well, yeah. What the big questions are, is that something that can be added to how many different cars? Is it going to be a Lexus Apple partnership? There's so many questions there. Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to wait and see what the features are, but it seems like Apple.
I do. I want a self-driving car. I'm all for that.
Yeah, and
Love my self-driving car.
I've wanted a self-driving car
But
forever.
what's this super gigantic iPhone
sensor.
four? Yeah.
Yeah,
What's the function?
that enables it to drive itself.
Oh,
It's basically sensors that
antenna?
there's a couple of them like LiDAR, which are mapping the world around us in 3D, and there's multiple sensors. There's also locations, distance sensors that are looking how far things are around. So they usually have 2 to 3 systems, as well as onboard cameras. You can see all the sensors around on the sides, right, that are looking for all kinds of things.
Yeah, Jeremiah, are you in San Francisco very often? Because every time I go into the city, which is not that often, I see the Google the ones remapping and mapping and remapping and mapping, and those.
And then Cruise too, right? You see Cruise.
Yeah, and Cruise, and literally, I can be in the city for an hour or two, and I'll see 3 of them every single time.
Mm-hmm. It's literally like the Cambrian explosion of all these simplistic creatures, and we're trying to see which one will evolve and sustain. Literally like that.
So there's somebody who responded to your tweet, right? And named Juan Del Real, because you tweeted this.
Yes, I know him.
Right. And Juan also has a photo that he shared, and his photo, the car is actually on the road, where in your case, it looks like was it moving when you took a photo?
It's moving. It's moving.
It was moving, but there was nobody.
There's a stop sign that it's just moving from. Yep.
But there was nobody in the front seat?
No. There's by law in California, you still have to have the handler there, and they have to have their hands on the steering wheel at all times.
Because Juan's photo that I just clicked on, and then he has another photo from
exactly
24th Street in Mission, and that one I don't see a driver, but maybe they're leaning back in the. But by the way, there's 2 different models. They're all white Lexuses. Here's the commonality between your photo and his 2 other photos. They're all white Lexuses.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all 3 different sizes. He has one that's a kind of a sporty 4-door, but it's not a hatchback like yours. And
that's an RX 300 Lexus, I think.
And then he's got another one that is actually your same model, but it looks like, he has one that is your same model, and he has another one that's a little more sporty, sedan style. Interesting.
Yes. And I also thought the license plate of that one he shared is funny. It's BADP, Bad Apple.
Oh, funny. Oh, you're right.
Like, what? I mean, by the way, I know Juan for over 20 years, so I definitely trust him.
That's funny.
So is this something that's separate from the actual car?
Jeremiah,
is this sit on the car so they could put it on any car, or is it all, or are there also the sensors embedded in the car?
Yes. Okay, so in the other photos, you can see the sensors have been embedded. They cut holes in the body, and they added it into the actual behind the wheel wells. And often they take out their brake lights, and they put the sensors there and install them. I've been to Cruise headquarters, and often which is owned by partnered with General Motors, and the trunks are filled with computers and batteries. So these things are massively outfitted.
Which camera did you use for
also
that? That's a really sharp photo you took.
Really? Oh, that's just an iPhone.
Is it?
Yeah, iPhone 11. Nothing special.
I'm curious. I've seen in the car. I'm curious.
Yes, there's 2 people speaking, and I have to run in 1 minute. Okay. So go ahead.
It's Katie in Twitter Spaces. There might be a delay, but I would love to zoom out figuratively and talk about Apple and car and Google and car, because this photo is all about hardware and self-driving. But I think that the very interesting race to watch is on software and the infotainment system near term, and which OS is making the power moves to effectively have a playbook there.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point. And the other thing I'll add before I leave is the most important thing is the data set of the road. And so whoever's mapping the road, that's how you guide where the car should go exactly. And technically there's two data sets they're mapping. I'm not an expert in this. This is what I've learned from people in the space. So I'm sure there are self-driving car experts in the room, but you need the car can technically drive itself even if there's nobody on the road, because it has the map data. And we're talking down to the pothole. It's good. Like all of these cameras around, they're recording it. So that's why Tesla's had cameras on their cars for a long time. They're actually recording the road. So whoever has the map data set is part one. The second one is the sensors to see what's happening in real time around you, people and cars and animals. So you need both, plus whatever the software you said. Hey, thanks guys.
Well, actually,
I got a jam.
All right, Jeremiah, great to see you again. Do come by.
Take care.
All right.
so Tesla actually make it clear when they talk about how their technology works that they don't store the map of the road. At least they haven't done up until recently, because the map is all very well, but the cat, the dog, the person, everything else needs to be calculated and responded to in real time. So that becomes a superset of the problem. So I find it really interesting when these companies rely on millimeter maps to then have and use a Tesla and see that it has no concept of a very gross concept of mapping, just route level mapping. That's all it has, and still does a great job on the site as humans do. So they do take a very different approach. It's going to be fascinating to see who wins out.
So Cheryl,
Tyler,
yeah,
it's 2017.
Cheryl just found a article that she DM'd me from 2017 about Lexus SUVs. By the way, identical make and model to the ones we're looking at. Used, and the headline says Lexus SUVs used to test Apple's self-driving software caught on video. And also, it's a white Lexus SUV of the same model, by the way. So they've been doing this for more than a minute. Although the hardware on top of the car keeps changing, notably, and the one in Jeremiah's photo is incredibly modern and sleek looking, like an iPhone, and the one in Cheryl's article from 2017 looks like those old Google cars that used to drive around your neighborhood doing the street view with these crazy spinning cameras on top and whatnot.
Alexandra is here if you want to go through the blockchain. I have to go again.
Oh yeah, what were we talking about on what was the
something
issue?
Blockworm or something?
Oh yeah, the hack that happened on the wormhole. Blockchain bridge wormhole confirms a hacker stole 322 million worth of Ethereum and moves its site into maintenance mode. Wormhole is offering a $10 million bug bounty, and it seems like the Solana continues to, suffer. This is kind of another setback for the whole space generally. Is that one way to look at it? How do you look at it, Alexandra?
I mean, I don't look at any of these individual things as I don't look at them as indictments on the system, right? Like that's the same thing as saying like a bank failed, so all banks are bad. Well, all banks are bad, but for different reasons. But you can't look at one instance of something and then say, well, it's a completely flawed system. This was so this wormhole is actually just a bridge that goes between Solana and Ethereum. And Solana is actually backwards compatible with Ethereum. So, which just means you shouldn't have to use a bridge. It should be, you should have things that you could wrap easily and be recognizable on the system. But this wormhole is basically supposed to be like a faster, better bridge because I'm trying not to get too down in the weeds with this, but with Ethereum, the way that they engineered a form of interoperability is using something called the EVM, the Ethereum Virtual Machine. There's sort of this idea in the blockchain community that this is like some magical device that transports all assets in perfect shape to other chains. and no one really considers whether or how intact they'll be when they come back. But that is never discussed. But all it is a compressor. So it just compresses code, and the problem with it is so sometimes you can compress the code and you can actually cache, CACHE, not CASH. You can cache it, all the data, and that basically what that token represents. You can cache it somewhere and then pull it back in order to go back onto onto Ethereum. So if you go to another chain like Tezos and then you want to come back, then theoretically you should be able to pull out the same token, but it doesn't actually work that way. It's really just essentially you're getting things like metadata. That's really what you're getting. You're not getting any innovations that have happened. So if there's innovations on the Ethereum chain and you send it to another chain that is let's say Tezos, and the new benefits from the token that existed on Ethereum can't be read by Tezos because it just doesn't offer the same attributes. So whatever can be read will be passed over to Tezos. So first you lose those attributes, but okay, assuming that that's okay with you because you think, well, the attributes were cached, so I should be able to get them if I go back. But what ends up happening is now your token is recognized as a wrapped form of a native Tezos coin. But when it goes back, there isn't a marker there that says, when you go back to Ethereum, add in all of these innovations. So that's one of the problems, is being able to keep the assets that you have in the way that you have them on chains that allow more attributes or are more innovative or advanced. So this is one of the main problems with bridges in general, is that it assumes a static level of innovation on both ends, and that is not true. So the wormhole is just another way to do this, where you could easily transfer something from Ethereum to Solana, and it would wrap it in a Solana native token and could be used. And then you could bring, theoretically, you could bring that token back to Ethereum, and it would go back to a native Ethereum token. Well, what happened here is there was a bug. And I think Nicholas had mentioned, and I was looking for it, but I just didn't have time to find it. But Nicholas mentioned that the bug was actually an exploitable bug from Solana's side. So what happened is, when they're minting this wrapped Ethereum, you have to confirm that the Ethereum is legit, right? It was minted, and it is, or mined, right? And that particular coin does truly exist. Well, in Solana, apparently, the way that the wormhole was allowed to exploit this one aspect of Solana minting, which doesn't require you to prove that this particular coin was minted. And so what happened is, someone basically pretended that they had minted a bunch, or mined a bunch of Ethereum, and then wrapped it in Tezos, and then went to a decentralized exchange and exchanged the wrapped Ethereum, which is based in nothing, into real Ethereum, and then took off with $320 million. So, the issue there is, again, if you're not confirming something. So this is kind of a mix of the wormhole allowed bugs to get exploited. Solana messed up. If it's, if this, I'm assuming this is true. Nicholas, is good about this kind of stuff. So, if it exploited this particular hole in requirement, and so that's how it was basically it stole pretend Ethereum, turned it into real Ethereum. It's like a form of money laundering. And this happens not just because of this bug, but because these transfers happen without requiring KYC AML. So some sort of proof of the identity of this wallet, and there's a signature that matches a transfer of real Ethereum to this wallet. And that's one of the benefits of having KYC AML, and one of the reasons that's going to be required. So now I think that the group that did the wormhole is now offering $10 million in bounty, because they're called, bug bounties. So like basically, we'll pretend you just found a bug for us, even though we didn't hire you to do that. But be a white hat, and we'll give you money if you return the rest of it. I don't know that he's going to. I'm assuming it's a guy. It could be a woman. Who knows? But that
Nicholas is
particular
into your
person
space.
is not responding.
Okay. And Nicholas is a speaker now. Thank you for that, Alexandra. Nicholas, what's your take on this wormhole?
Yeah, hi. Well, first of all, I'm not an expert on Solana. So if there is a Solana expert out there, I'm sure they'll have a view. But my viewpoint is, reductively, that the problem that occurred was that the exploiter was able to mint on the Solana side their version of ETH. And the reason why they were able to do that is that they were able to, the problem that I believe there is with Solana and the other EVM chains is that the security is not the same at the level where the smart contract is technically processed, is not at the base layer. So, sorry about the dog in the background. So the issue that happened was that the ETH were created by a smart contract referring to another smart contract, and that smart contract had not been updated sufficiently, that the verify signatures piece of it was in fact false. So the Solana ETH was minted and then sent across a bridge, which is the wormhole bridge, which worked just fine because it sent the Solana ETH and it enabled the fake Solana ETH was enabled to move across the bridge because it was duly effectively executed, and it came out on the other side as real ETH, and then those real ETH was stolen. So I don't think it's an issue of KYC AML per se. This is an issue of using smart contracts to move large amounts of money where the smart contracts are where the hacks have happened. And there's been $14 billion of hacks last year that have occurred predominantly from the smart contract layer. That is the problem. You cannot have a mainstream use case where everybody is composing these different things at the second layer. It needs to be fundamentally evidenced at layer one, which is why we believe identity and the blockchain and the security should be together. That's the weakness of the design. Sorry for the long answer.
No. This is Alexandra. Yeah. So I mentioned that you had this information about this bug exploit, and what you're talking about, that secondary layer contract that doesn't go all the way down. That's exactly what happened in the exploits on like when they exploited a hack essentially on Avalanche. Same thing. They have 3 different layers in the base chain, and most people will interact just with, they call it the C layer, the contract layer. And it's the same problem where they're exploiting this thing that it doesn't always go down to the base layer, which I think they call the X layer. So that's it is definitely where we see a lot of issues. Just to point that out.
Okay. So next up is a bunch of good tweets from Pam. That scientists just created magnetic seeds to heat up and kill cancer. Researchers at University College London used an MRI scanner to guide a tiny magnetic seed through the brain to heat and destroy cancer cells. Very cool sci-fi there. The next is equally so. From Kinsha, shares this one from the Hindustan Times. After Iron Dome, Israel plans laser wall to intercept missiles. The Iron Dome system was made operational in 2011. It uses radar-based technology, which detects incoming missiles and takes countermeasures. And now they're going to use a laser walls. I like the sound of it. Next is from Neta. That it's about Havana Syndrome. U.S. intelligence officials examining Havana Syndrome say the only plausible explanation for a small number of cases is a device or a weapon of some kind that afflicted dozens of U.S. diplomats around the world. And they're saying that it is a weapon. CIA reports finds. Okay, and now there's a related article in USA Today that U.S. spies likely being targeted by energy waves in some Havana Syndrome cases, panel says. U.S. intelligence officials announced Wednesday that a high-tech device shooting pulsed electromagnetic energy or ultrasound waves could be causing at least some of the cases of Havana Syndrome, the battery of mysterious and debilitating medical symptoms sickening U.S. spies and diplomats working overseas. The finding, made by a panel of intelligence community experts, is consistent with at least one hypothesis given by U.S. officials in recent years that Russia, China, or some other nation-state adversary is targeting unwitting Americans with some kind of weapon. In a joint statement, Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines and CIA Chief William Burns said that the panel, part of a top-secret military agency investigation into Havana Syndrome, is making progress in homing in on potential medical and scientific explanations for some of the severe headaches and, in some cases, brain injury reported by potentially hundreds of federal government employees. Now, the word brain injury is critically important to that last sentence because of the number of cases of this. There's now hundreds, as you just heard. This is leading some quote-unquote experts to conclude that this is likely a mass hysteria event, which could be true in the case of headaches, but not in the case of actual brain injuries, because mass hysteria won't actually cause brain injuries. It could cause headaches. It could cause migraines. It could cause vomiting, all kinds of things, but not brain injuries. So that those quote-unquote experts are now debunked, and it's now looking more and more like what we've known that it is all along. And I wish our dear friend Chris was here.
I just saw Ellie also join in. Maybe he's got something to say too.
Yeah, I don't know if Ellie saw the CIA's panel announcement. The CIA caused uproar last month when it issued intelligence assessments ruling out Russia, China, and other foreign powers' involvement in causing such widespread anomalous health incidences, or AHIs, the U.S. government official term for Havana Syndrome. That assessment was controversial because it also attributed all but a few dozen of the many hundreds of reported cases to medical, environmental, or technical causes that intelligence officials said were unrelated to any coordinated effort to target Americans. In response, some congressional lawmakers and other critics accused the intelligence community of being too dismissive of the controversy. They cited the wealth of information that has been made public about U.S. spies and other employees having to return home from overseas posts or even retire due to documented injuries. On Wednesday, Haines and Burns, the heads of these agencies after all, and several U.S. intelligence officials sought to push back on that narrative by disclosing the findings of the panel of experts, including its conclusion that the signs and symptoms of Havana Syndrome are genuine and compelling. The panel of scientific, technical, and medical experts based on their assessment in part on the fact that some incidents have affected multiple people in the same space. Oh, interesting. And clinical samples from a few affected individuals that showed evidence of cellular injury to the nervous system. Gotcha. Bam. That's the critical bit, y'all. That was the critical bit. Because the quote-unquote experts were trying to say it's mass hysteria syndrome, that this is a well-known thing, and here's all the reasons for that. That's all fine and dandy until you have nerve damage, which they now claim to have strong evidence of. evidence of cellular injury to the nervous system. Quote, we continue to pursue complementary efforts to get to the bottom of anomalous health incidents, aka Havana Syndrome, to deliver access to world-class care for those affected. We will stay at it with continued rigor for however long it takes. Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, said that the new findings declassified and disclosed on Wednesday, quote, underscore the need to continue investigating the source of these symptoms and prioritizing access to care for those suffering from these medical conditions. One more quote from Adam Schiff, I think. Yes, from Adam Schiff from California. Let me stress that though this and other recent IC efforts have helped to answer important questions we have about these incidents, much more remains to be done and must be. The expert panel intentionally did not focus on attribution or who might be behind any coordinated effort to sicken or injure U.S. employees. U.S. intelligence officials said they did not say whether they believe any foreign government might have been behind the relative few cases in which a directed energy source might have been used. Instead, the Haynes and Burns, the heads of the agencies, said that panel members drilled down on a subset of a few dozen U.S. employees whose cases could not be easily explained by known environmental or medical conditions and in which certain external factors may have contributed. The experts panel concluded, pulsed electromagnetic energy, particularly in the radio frequency range, plausibly explains the core characteristics. Oh, see? God damn it. Why are we ahead of these people? Ellie, jump in here. Where's Ellie?
Yeah, I only heard the headline like last night. I'm kind of going through the Al Jazeera article as you're talking since I tried to figure out what's going on. What I did see is that Eric Lander was involved with the panel. He's like first-rate scientist. He's not a political hack or anything. At least on that basis, I think that they probably did a thorough job. But of course, I have to dig into details, and I'd really like to see the cellular data that they use to back that up. But I still have to go through it.
It's ultrasound also plausibly explains the core characteristics. Yep, that's what we came up with, essentially. In both of those scenarios, the experts cautioned that significant information gaps existed, but one intelligence official said it's more than theory. We were able to obtain some level of evidence. Great. A study of Havana Syndrome in the U.S. National Academies of Science and Engineering and Medicine concluded in 2020 that more than 100 victims had suffered real physical injuries and that some form of electromagnetic radiation was a likely cause. Yep, that's what we've been talking about. Some experts have said that an electromagnetic beam sent at the precise wavelengths. Jesus Christ, they're onto us. This is precisely what we've been saying. Precisely. Am I losing my mind here? Can one
getting my tinfoil hat.
Flash your mics if you are a regular tech newser who was in the rooms when Chris and I and Ellie and John or others were talking about precisely this. Precisely this. Thank you.
But the final piece, right? But Tyler said, is it hard to do this in China? So the suspect, list is short, I think.
An electromagnetic beam sent at the precise wavelength. And again, the only part they're missing is the amplification through a lens. That's the only part they're missing.
So it seems kind of evident this is going on and it's happening. Now the question is, what are people going to do in order to combat it? What do you have to start wearing something? Do you have to create something? I mean, I start going into what is it going to look like in the future then?
It says that sent at the precise wavelength, the electromagnetic beam could travel hundreds of yards and create the same symptoms in unwitting victims as those seen in Havana Syndrome incidents. If this is the case, it's likely that these beams are interfering with the electrical functions of the brain and central nervous system, says Ian Boyd, a professor of aerospace engineering, wrote last September. Yep.
So all those tinfoil hat things were actually a portent of the future.
Yeah, well, if you that's the whole point is if you're wearing a tinfoil hat, it'll deflect the beams. Go ahead, Jason.
They're getting
Go ahead, David, and then we'll go to Jason.
they're getting the conspiracy beam already. Sorry, you said tinfoil hats.
Yeah.
Maybe we can combine the tinfoil hat with HoloLens.
Jason, you wanted to jump in?
And an N95 mask.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Ooh,
you
I
could
love
grab
that.
your local conspiracy theorist and have them make you a tinfoil hat. I think that is the standard outfit for this particular weapon.
Yeah.
So Tyler, real and it's for certain being used. The question is it the U.S. government using a shield, or is it an offensive weapon used by an enemy of the state? One way or another, it's certain that people are suffering from this in large numbers.
Right. Sorry, Ken, go ahead.
Yeah, when our late friend Chris, he had told me, because I had asked him that question, what did we do? He says that really the only thing he could think of is, which is maybe not practical, is everybody has to be in a Faraday cage,
Right, aka a tinfoil hat. Yeah. So,
Well, but Tyler, this article is really interesting. Was the one that was, what was it, like a week ago? The report said it wasn't a known adversary that was doing this.
Right.
The article never stated that it wasn't the CIA.
Right.
Which is pretty interesting.
Right. Well, that it wasn't Russia or China. Well, they were trying to say that it wasn't Russia or China, and then they don't think it's they just went a little too far, and it got people upset, and then now the bosses have to come out and reveal what this previously confidential findings of this panel are saying, which is much more in line with what we had been assuming. Okay. So a few more things.
Tyler, do you remember the name of the company that Chris was talking about? Because he knew that.
We're going to have to go back and listen to the replays on some of those. Yeah, because he had a buddy from UC Irvine who sold the company to a Chinese company who then shut down the company. And he showed me the DMs with that friend who worked at that company, who is saying in our DMs saying, yeah, it was crazy. They bought our company and then they shut us down. And, I don't know what they're doing with it now.
And Chris mentioned that to me, and if I remember correctly, that guy died in a plane crash.
The boss of that company died in the plane crash. The guy that we were doing the exchange with was lower in the company. That's correct.
Yikes.
Yeah. So he died in a solo plane crash, by the way, anyway. So the next, Alexandra, do you have a room starting in 3 minutes?
I don't think so.
No? Okay. So
no, it's in an hour and 3 minutes.
Okay. we can wrap it in 3 minutes here. I just got like 5 tweets to run through real fast. So a new company called Olipop is coming out, and it sounds very interesting, and it's being backed by people like Gwyneth Paltrow. Olipop tastes like the soda you grew up sipping, but with the added benefit, get this, of microbiome and digestive health support with plant fiber, prebiotics, botanicals, etc. Which leads me to ask, why the hell hasn't that been part of all of our diets for a while? Kind of, if it works, that would be brilliant. I would love that. So the next one is from Katerina from the New York Times. It says, no soil, no growing season, just add water and technology. A new breed of hydroponic farm, huge and high-tech, is popping up in indoor spaces all across America, drawing celebrity investors and critics. Yes, I've been studying this myself for the past several months. And these hydroponic, aeroponic, vertical farms are becoming a big thing. And they're very cool and they're very exciting, and everyone can do it in their own homes. I just tweeted it to the Tech News Twitter account for those who want to see a great photo of one of them. The next is Bill Gates invests in carbon capture startup after tech breakthrough. An MIT spinoff has developed a new material that aims to make sucking CO2 out of the atmosphere more efficient. Great. And also from...
They're called trees.
Yeah. Yes, tree. This is one of the best, coolest technologies ever, these trees.
Or bamboo.
It's amazing. You just put seeds in the ground and you don't chop them down to do paper, print, post, and pack, and keep 27 million trees in the ground every year, and suddenly you've got a carbon sink.
Yeah, apparently, it can make it. It can.
That's hysterical. Wait, planting trees is a startup now? Seriously? That's pretty awesome.
It'll even make an environment like breathable air, and so we could even live on the planet and stuff like that. It's really wild.
Solves the problem of Mars right there.
Yeah. So the next is from Katerina that reading on a smartphone affects psi generation and brain activity. Compared to reading on paper, reading on a smartphone elicits fewer psis, promotes brain overactivity in the prefrontal cortex, results in reduced comprehension. Boom. There it is in black and white, no pun intended. So the next,
I gotta tell you, I started to use a pen again lately, and I'm getting the worst cramps in my hand as I'm using. I'm trying to get back to pen and paper more than just sitting in front of a computer. So it could be something to it.
I'd comment on that, but I have to print it out first.
Okay. The next is BB. An Australian billionaire has launched a criminal case against Facebook, alleging that Facebook failed to prevent scam ads that used his image. Andrew Forrest takes aim at scam ads that used his image in the world's first case in Australia. And
that's a smart attack vector. Very smart.
Okay. We will pause there because we've pretty much gone through most of the tweets. Yeah. Okay, we'll pause it there at the top of the hour and meet again manana. Alexandra, do you want to you're going to open your room in an hour?
Yes, I am opening in an hour. It's taxes and estate planning for crypto. So, it's really important. So you guys if you're doing anything, trading, buying, selling, if it's Bitcoin or other crypto, that's what we're talking about today. This year they're literally asking every single person detailed questions about crypto holdings and payouts and stuff. And there's a new ruling that just came out about how some staking assets are being taxed, and DeFi has a different taxation issue. So come listen to it. Come talk about the problems that happen. What happened with our friend Chris, when you have assets and you don't plan, it's really hard for the people that remain. So, anyway, okay, please come visit.
Well, I got one more story here that Jason found from an Ohio couple and their daughter are suing a doctor and the local healthcare system, claiming that the doctor wrongly inseminated the wife with a stranger's sperm, which the family says it did not discover until years later. The couple, Mike and Jeannie Harvey, underwent an insemination procedure in 1991 to fertilize the wife's egg with the husband's sperm, of course. According to a press release from the family's attorney, Janine eventually became pregnant and gave birth to a baby girl, Jessica Harvey Galloway. Leading up to Christmas 2020, Jessica and her husband asked her parents for Ancestry.com kits ahead of a trip to Europe with hopes of tracking down relatives while there. The DNA test results revealed a shocking discovery. The father who had raised her was not her biological father. Further tests led Jessica to her biological dad, who confirmed that he and his wife were patients of the same fertility doctor as Jessica's parents in the same year. At the time, the doctor was serving as chief of division of reproductive endocrinology and infertility, and is still listed as a working physician. He could not be reached for comment.
This actually happened before. I don't know if you guys remember this a few years ago. I'm coming, Bear. But this doctor named Kermit something or other. Clearly, there's a reason why I remember that first name. But he was an obstetrician, and he inseminated like hundreds of women with his sperm.
So
Yeah, I
there's
remember
already
that.
case law out there. I think you
This
guys,
this
yeah.
was the
So
guy at
there's case law out
UCI.
there already about what happens if this goes wrong. It's criminal. There's a criminal charges that attach.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Alexander, that,
and
Tyler, the one that you're talking about where they actually, I heard about this a couple months ago, the one where that you're talking about where they swapped the sperm and impregnated the women each with the and they did find out, and the follow-on story was that they met, and I can't remember if they actually swapped the kids or they each kept, I think they did. And it's rocky. It's a really rocky one because the kids, as you noted, like their biological parents aren't the ones that are raising them.
Weird one. Okay.
So one last one, if you
Yikes.
didn't get to it, Tyler,
Yep.
did you get to the one about rapid antigen tests? People like testing after 5 days of isolation still being positive and contagious.
No.
Okay, so that was a tweet by Michael MENA about medarchs of preprint. And in a nutshell, the explanation is that, and this is in specifically people who are vaccinated and boosted. And what they're finding is that symptoms start sooner in those people. And so, therefore, like the 5 day count period, right, is starting sooner. And so for them, the peak of viral load and hence contagiousness is a little bit later. And the decay would appear to lag, even though it isn't in reality from when they were infected. But the upshot is that people who are just isolating for 5 days, if they've been vaccinated and boosted, and this is comparing them to people who were just vaccinated, by the way, are still like 50% roughly are still contagious on the 5th day, and it can stretch out a few more days just because you've kind of shifted the window without knowing it. And I tagged you in that. If I also sent a link to the tweet to Cheryl.
There was another related COVID point today that Sweden is joining Denmark, and I recall it was also Norway and Finland are also jumping in to remove all COVID restrictions of all kinds starting February 9th.
Yeah, they figured out how to end the pandemic just by declaring it over.
Right. Yeah, interesting. I don't know why we didn't think of that earlier, but we'll see what happens. Fingers crossed. So
they're the control for all epidemiologists now.
Exactly right.
Everything that we try to do.
God bless the Swedes. The control group. All right, everybody. See you tomorrow, and next time have a wonderful Thursday. We'll see you Friday.